Hey everybody, welcome to the Drama Queen Bee Quilt Studio. I'm Beth Maitland. Another fun fact today, the debate about pressing seams rages on. Do you press your seams open or do you press your seams, both little seam allowances, over to one side? I personally use both techniques, and I'll tell you the pros and cons of each, and then you can decide for each project what you decide to do with your seams when you're pressing. So if you press your seams open, it is very true that eliminates bulk when you get down to the layering and quilting process. If the seam is open, there's only one seam allowance on either side of the stitching. However, that is, if you're going to use that quilt a lot and it's going to be used by children or laundered frequently, it weakens that thread. The thread is not protected. That seam is open and the thread along the seam well is loose, so, available to any kind of wear. So over time, it's possible that thread will break and you'll have to go in and do repairs by hand. So that's kind of a little bit of the downside of pressing open. The upside is that it's not bulky. If you press both seam allowances to one side, now that thread is protected by two layers of your seam allowance. And so that if you have a quilt that's going to be hard worn or laundered frequently or in the sun or used by kids, absolutely, that is a better, a little safer technique for longer wear. However, it's two layers now of your seam allowance fabric underneath. And so for stitch in the ditch, that actually works to your benefit. It allows you to stitch on the away side of that seam, and those two pieces of fabric kind of leave a little lip, so it's easier for you to do that stitch in the ditch, and the threads are protected. However, it's a little bit bulkier if you're doing some other kind of quilting, so that's something to consider. The last issue about both seam allowances being pressed to one side is if you're using light fabrics or a lighter weight fabric. You may be able to see those little seam allowances when you get to your finished project, and that's kind of a little bit of a disappointment. If you're using a light solid and you press them under, you can often, when you get down to the layering, because your batting is a light color, you can see that seam allowance through the fabric, although, as though it's a little bit sheer. Or if you're using even a light print, if it's light in hue, if it's a white or a beige or a cream or a pale pink, you're going to be able to probably see those seams. So you want to always press to the dark side. That's kind of a good rule. If it works, sometimes your seams won't nest if there are a lot of patchwork a lot of little seams in your project, but it's a good thing to consider. Would you rather press to the dark side, have a little bit of bulk to deal with, and not be able to see those seam allowances or not? So those are my thoughts on pressing your seams. I hope you dig right in and get to quilting. I would love to hear your comments and see what you end up doing. Post me pictures of your projects. I'd love to see. So fun facts, a little tip on seam allowance pressing from Beth Maitland, the Drama Queen Bee.